Okay, I believe we're live, right? So we're going, okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Launch Canada Debrief, organized by Space Place. Welcome everybody. My name is Zul Mordasevich. I'm a founding member of the Mars student group and a participant of Launch Canada at the student team and the student team MOC, the Metropolitan Aerospace Combustion Hub, where we tested our liquid hybrid rocket engine this summer. So I would like to begin the event by thanking the sponsors of Space Place and Launch Canada. So that firstly was going to be MDA, LTTS, and Pratt & Whitney, of course. And we're going to play a quick video from MDA. So thank you again to MDA. Hope you enjoyed that video. Tonight we're going to have 3 guest speakers, and we're going to begin with the beloved Adam Trumpour, the founder and president of Launch Canada. You might know him from the LR101 or the turbopump projects. He works on developing turbines at Pratt & Whitney, and today he's going to give a talk. So please take it away, Adam. I'm going to let you share your screen now.
Great. Thank you, Zul. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right, great. So I'll assume that not everybody joining us today has been in on some of our previous talks that we've done with Space Place. So just for a quick introduction, my name is Adam Trumpour. By day, I work in concept design and integration on gas turbine engines at Pratt & Whitney, Canada. But during every other waking moment, I design, build, and test rocket engines, consult on matters related to rocket propulsion and space launch, and especially I work to help cultivate the next generation of top aerospace talent who will carry our industry forward, all while helping to build new space capabilities for Canada at a fraction of what it traditionally costs to do this. So I do have unusual pastimes, and I do all this partly because a remarkable thing has been happening over the last few years. For about the last 8 or 9 years, all across the country, a grassroots rocketry movement has been growing, and it's been driven to a really large extent by students, amateurs, and young professionals who see what's happening internationally at big high-profile companies like SpaceX and many others. They're inspired by it, and they're no longer satisfied with being told that we in Canada can't do that here, that we have to stick to our traditional space technology niches and can't possibly think beyond them. So this inspiration has been drawing students to engineering like never before, and they've been taking it upon themselves to create their own rocket teams, win the top awards at major international competitions, develop technologies that many companies would be hard-pressed to match, all the while creating whole new pathways into this industry for large segments of the country where that has never existed before. Even at universities with no aerospace content in any of their degree programs. One of our teams even set the world record for the largest rocket engine ever fired by students anywhere in the world. And we've got several teams that are even working towards building rockets capable of reaching suborbital space. So this has been a really unique time, and we've been seeing an amazing amount of enthusiasm for rocketry and space exploration. I started Launch Canada several years ago as a nonprofit to unite, support, and grow this emerging Canadian rocketry community in the broadest possible sense, to connect it with the resources and guidance that it needs to be safe and successful, to give students the opportunity to try big, difficult things, and whether or not they succeed or fail, to develop unmatched, real-world, highly transferable engineering skills that will place these students in the top tier of engineering talent, all while breaking down barriers to make this industry more accessible for Canadians, whoever and wherever they might be. So our signature event is the Launch Canada Challenge, which is a unique and uniquely Canadian annual rocket engineering competition that's designed to help students learn how to take on the most demanding aerospace systems engineering projects. We have 2 launch challenges within this competition, basic and advanced, as well as a payload challenge to get students thinking not just about the rocket, but what you can do with a rocket. We also have a technology development challenge that allows students to take a deep dive into specific rocket-related technologies that are of interest to them, with an emphasis on entrepreneurial thinking and solving real technical challenges facing the industry. So we've got a whole host of participants in this event. On the student side, for this year, we're up to about 30 university teams nationwide, representing about 2,000 involved students. And they come from, at this point, almost every province in the country. We have a whole host of sponsors who work with us to make it possible to do this. And in many cases, these sponsors are always looking to hire top talents. So they, I think, benefit quite a lot from what we do. And we regularly attract a lot of interest from people in the space industry, both in Canada and abroad. And during the last week of August, we held our 2nd annual Launch Canada competition, and boy, it was wild. So this year we had 18 university teams make it all the way through to the final event, which was nearly double the number that we had in our first year. And here's a little taste of what that looked like.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Word student rocketry teams from across the country have been overjoyed to hear on Canadian soil over a dozen times this past week during the 2nd annual Launch Canada competition.
this is really the first time that these students have had a chance to be able to come together in one place here in Canada, meet each other, and launch and demonstrate all these projects together.
Okay, so the competition this year began with a two-day conference, and this was held at the Archie Dillon Sportsplex Arena in Timmins, Ontario, where students were able to showcase their work, connect with sponsors and the public, and listen to talks by leaders in the industry. So we had a whole student exhibition area. We had the students giving various presentations. We had industry leaders giving talks as well. Sponsors had booths and were able to showcase what they do and connect with the students. And then we had all kinds of outreach activities going on as well for members of the public. So after the two-day conference, we move out to our more remote launch site for an intense week of rocket launches and technology demonstration and a certain amount of bushwhacking through the forest to recover rockets and their payloads. The launches were actually hosted on the ancestral lands of the Matagami First Nation, who were a wonderful partner for this year. So the week was really not only about flying and testing rockets, it was also about building connections and understanding with our Indigenous community and making the space industry that much more real and tangible in a part of the country where often it hasn't been in the past. So the launch days are always pretty hectic for the students, but they feature a main base camp area where teams will be hard at work assembling their rockets, getting everything ready to fly. We've got a main mission control area and spectator viewing area, and then we've got multiple launch pad and engine test areas where all of the main action takes place. But while competition is a great driver of learning and innovation, so is collaboration. And so in recognition of that, outside of our competition, we also run what we call our special projects. And these are major hands-on opportunities open to students from all the participating teams, allowing them to work together on projects that might be bigger than any one of them could easily do on their own. And they're also a way for us and our partners to work directly with the students outside of the competition, demonstrate professional practices, tools, and hardware, and teach the students lessons that they can bring back to their own teams and carry with them as they join the workforce, all while demonstrating advanced technologies for usually 1 to 2 orders of magnitude less cost than what even the most aggressive startup company could achieve. So our first such project in 2021 was a 4-month-long hands-on rocket engine testing workshop. You can see the end result of that right in the bottom left. And this year we're working with a number of partners to develop the first rocket engine turbopump in Canada, educating students on the practical engineering of turbo machinery while closing a gaping hole in Canada's current rocket propulsion expertise. So this is just some of the things that that we work on at Launch Canada. And when one competition ends, another one begins, and we're already well into our 2024 Launch Canada competition cycle. So for this year, we've got more than 30 different schools signed up and a number of firsts this year. We've got our first 2 maritime teams. We've got our first team from Saskatchewan, which now gives us contiguous rocket teams from coast to coast. We've got our first 2 high school teams. We've got our first Indigenous team, our first all-girls team, and we've got a growing number of teams that are actually pursuing multiple projects. So we really did all of this to try to create an outlet for Canadians to have these opportunities to work on this technology. And clearly it's been working, and we're looking forward to building on the success of the 2023 event for the next competition in August 2024. So that's what we do and how we came about, but really Launch Canada exists because we simply recognize an important reality. This is happening, and today the excitement of rocketry is drawing students to engineering like never before. So it might start with a young person watching a SpaceX Falcon 9 launch and land, and then it gets them asking, how did they do that? And this is an opportunity. They're thinking, they're asking questions, and this is where learning starts. But in the case of rocketry, how did they do that is a really big question. It involves every engineering discipline that there is at a very advanced level. It involves systems engineering. So we empower students to explore this, run with it, experience it, maybe fail, and if they fail, to learn from it. Whether it's our competition or special projects, we create opportunities for learning and doing with some of the most demanding engineering challenges there are. And it works. It's really a grassroots approach to building a new industry from scratch. And our students are very highly sought after both in Canada and internationally. But it isn't just about rocketry. Our top sponsors last year were Pratt & Whitney Canada and MDA, neither of whom actually build rockets. But they both recognized that students who understand how to do things like this are the ideal new employees for mission critical industries like aerospace. And in this country and industry, honestly, we have tended to spend far too much time telling people what they can't do. So Launch Canada is really based on a novel concept. We let the students tell us what they want to do, what excites them, what motivates them, what makes them want to spend all their free time learning. And then we will move mountains, figuratively and sometimes literally, to support them, all the while setting a high bar, but being open to the possibility that they might not only rise to the challenge, they might actually amaze us. But all of them will gain an intense real-world engineering experience that is almost unheard of for new graduates. This is really what Launch Canada is all about. So I will stop there and hand it back to you, Zul.
Thank you so much for taking your time to speak, Adam. Really appreciate it. Before we go on to the next speaker, I'd just like to mention that our Space Place is going to be selling Eclipse glasses. So if you email Space Place, they will let you know how to purchase them. So yeah, without further ado, I'd like to announce that the next guest speaker is going to be Cyril Mani, who is co-lead of the McGill Propulsion Division, who won second place in the advanced section in the rocketry division at Launch Canada this year. He currently works on machine learning at CSA, and in the past he has worked on hybrid rockets at Reaction Dynamics. He also hosted the Launch Canada speaker stage. So please, without further ado, Cyril, I will let you take it away.
Hello, everyone. It's always an honor and a pain to be right after Adam. It's so inspiring. Like my cheeks are hurting from smiling after the videos and the presentation. But awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. I would love to still be on the team. Just to clarify, I'm retired now, the McGill Rocket team. But I'll be talking a little bit about my experience working on the team. So can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Beautiful. I did not share sound, so let me try again. I'll share it again with the sound. Okay, there you go. Okay. So thanks to Adam. He presented what Launch Canada does and how we impact students. And I'd like to provide the other perspective. So from a student perspective, what does Launch Canada do for you, and what's the experience like, to kind of show both sides of the coin and how it can help Canada as a whole and the student individually itself, and why it's such a great deal for Canada. So first, a little bit about me. I've always been interested to space. This is me when I was 8, writing in French that one day I would work in space. And I actually say one day I'll work at NASA. because I didn't think that Canada had the capacity to do this. I didn't think that we would have these opportunities, and today we do. And that's why I'm very well happy to stay here in Canada. I then joined McGill in 2019 and the McGill rocket team shortly after. Like you mentioned, I'm now at the Canadian Space Agency, graduating this year and participating in other research activities with Alternative Fuels Lab and Launch Canada. So still working in propulsion somehow, working with various alternative fuels, but my time as the hybrid lead is over. However, I can talk a little bit about the perspective and how you can, as a student, involve yourself in rocketry in Canada. So there's a few things you can do, you know, personal projects, aerospace research, there's internships at Canadian rocket companies that are available, but most importantly, like Adam mentioned, for 30 universities or 30 teams, at least in Canada, you can join design teams. And in those design teams, you will have hands-on experience designing, modeling, building, and launching rockets. And then you can launch them at Launch Canada. So this is what I'm going to focus on today from a student perspective. So a little bit about the McGill rocket team. So where I got most of my rocketry experience. It's 150 engineering students, and that's actually old, I realize now, because we're now close to 200. And we're in engineering, science, arts, even business, you know, almost all faculties at McGill. So all types of people. And what we do is sounding rockets. So we talked about rockets and launching rockets at Launch Canada, but I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into what we actually do on these rockets. So these are a few of the rockets that McGill launched. And so we have, you know, shorter rockets, longer rockets. What do they mean? What do they look like? And what do they do? Well, these are sounding rockets, and sounding rockets don't go to orbit. They go very high in the atmosphere. They reach a target apogee very precisely, and then they fall back on Earth. And the idea here is that you are evaluated on the performance of your rocket in terms of how it matches specifications that you gave to the competition. So I want to reach this altitude, I'm going to deploy my parachute here, and we evaluate you regarding that performance. And in 2018, the Stella 2 rocket from McGill rocket team won the Spaceport America Cup, the first place. And so this is where I come in. I was able, and I had the chance to work on McGill's very first hybrid engine. And what this is that students decide to design their own engine. So in sounding rockets, most of the time students buy their engines, integrate them into the rocket, and develop all the systems around it. But here we really wanted to do deep advanced engineering in the sense of figuring out how you can propel a rocket from the fundamental basics of physics, chemistry, and designing that engine ourselves. So the idea was to go to 10,000 feet. So not going the fastest, not going the highest, but being very precise. And this meant a lot of work and a lot of things. And I had the chance to lead the sub-team, the propulsion sub-team of the McGill rocket team, 22 members strong, and in charge of the hybrid rocket program. And a hybrid rocket program means a lot of things. Yes, it means an engine, but it also means launch infrastructure, and it means test site development. And I'll get to that in a minute. But these are the wonderful people I got to work with for 2 years. And so this work, like I said, is divided in 3 parts. There's engine development, which is the most obvious. Is okay, so as a student, what do you actually do on a day-to-day? Well, you go to the shop, you look at your task, what's next? Oh, okay, I got to test this plumbing configuration, and you assemble the rocket. Here, a hybrid engine, we mentioned hybrid engines, but let me specify that hybrid means a solid fuel and a liquid oxidizer. And this is kind of what you see here with the engine containing the solid fuel, the oxidizer tank containing the liquid or gaseous oxidizer, and then the feed system connecting both. So I had the chance to develop this engine, but also to develop the launch infrastructure, because the rocket won't, take off by itself. You have to raise it, plug it with the oxidizer, fill it, and there's a whole bunch of safety procedures coming with that. And then we also had to develop our own test site, and that's where most of my time came. So we were very lucky in the west of Montreal. We have a test site to test this engine, and so we had to build it from the ground up. So everything from plumbing system, electrical systems, and it was a blast to test it and to develop it. And so we were able to characterize this engine, so compare it to modeling performance. And so we did some cold flows, test plumbing, and eventually some hot fires here, which you can see with an infrared camera showing the performance of the engine, the thermal performance of the engine. And then once your engine is tested and all the rest happens by magic, avionics, payload, and all the things that I wasn't involved with, you integrate them and you get a rocket. And that rocket is ready to be launched. And so now that we have this rocket, it's time to compete. And we were able to participate in the last few years to 3 competitions. 2 ouches and 1 interesting one. And I'll go over the 2 ouches and explain a little bit why the last one was so important to us. So Spaceport America Cup, for those that don't know, it's a competition happening in New Mexico where we first participated to present our hybrid rocket. That means driving south, 22 hours, leaving the country, 22 hours, about that, 22 hours. You cross the border, you have to go to the US, you have to declare everything and show that everything is okay regarding the laws, and then you sleep in hotels along the way where you continue the last minute work, as you can see here. This is my hotel room with aluminum shavings on the floor, and the tank was actually in the bathtub at that moment. And then you get to the desert, you assemble the rocket, you walk really cool to the launch pad, and that was one of the most amazing moments. Is you slap it onto the rail, you raise it, and then you're ready for the big moment you've been working for 3 years until it's time to launch. And then Murphy's law is that anything, I think that's the right version, but anything bad that can happen will happen, or anything that will happen, that could happen, will happen. And that was our big first ouch. We're there, 2 years in the making, thousands and thousands of hours of work. And the first ouch was that while the rocket was loaded, everything was ready, we were ready to launch, the connector of the ground support equipment that I mentioned earlier did not want to disconnect, and the rocket was stuck there, and we had to abort. And so of 900 parts in this rocket, 1 failed and we couldn't launch. And that's how much engineering goes into this stuff. So we did rank still 2nd place in the world because hybrid rockets are so hard that not many people launched. So in our category, we were able to compete, and this is we have ignition, we have a liftoff. So this rocket is actually also from Montreal and won 1st place. So this is what it would have looked like if we launched that day. But I won't continue on this video because there's a more interesting one coming up. And so what's also cool is that this is research, right? It's literal, like, professional level work in some areas of this. So we're able to write 2 papers and publish them and present them at international conferences, where we're really able to show like some innovations in the field. But that was not enough because we had to do it again. We had to try again. So the team was really hard at work for a year. We put everything together, assembled the rocket once again, made a lot of design improvements, changed the GSC system, and everything was ready for a 2nd try at Spaceport America Cup once again. We go, assemble the rocket, put it on the rail, the whole thing. And then the disaster struck. And this is not a joke. A dust devil hit the rocket. And this is part of all the things you have to be part of, or have to think of in rocket. This is, once again, Murphy's law. Everything that's going to happen will happen, and even the things you don't control. So while everything else was perfect, McGill wasn't able to control. The dust devil hit the rocket on the rail, pulling it out of the ground and making a slam on actually some of our members' head, which are fine today. And so the result was disastrous, right? Like the engine, the whole tank was bent, the rocket was bent, the rail was, completely broken out of its support. But that's rocketry. We like challenge. We are scientists, we're engineers, and we appreciate challenge because it allows us to find solutions. And the solution here was a GoFundMe, and we're able to raise a little bit of money to try again. And this trying again meant the beginning of very amazing new things for McGill Rocket Team, and that was Launch Canada. And that was our new hope. It was in the same year, what can we do? Can we launch this rocket? It's ready, it's perfect, let's go. And so McGill Rocket Team decided to attend Launch Canada 2023, which was McGill's very first time competing at a Canadian competition. And so a new tank was designed, new avionics were integrated, a new rocket was built, all of that in the span of a few months. And the drive started. And this was a very amazing experience because we got to drive, 9 hours instead of 22, but also within our own country. And that was great because we got to really see the country as a whole and enjoy the beautiful landscapes. And trust me, this country is beautiful. And so going to Timmins, McGill Rocket Team was able to assemble the rocket, do some tests, and really perfect the art of getting this rocket ready. This is, if you remember my hotel room, well, this is my Airbnb's kitchen while I'm trying to cook a meal for the team. This is the table we're actually supposed to eat. But through all of this, we're able to put the rocket on the rail, get it ready for launch. And that's where McGill finally got to succeed. And after something like 7 to 8 years of developing this engine, it got to fly. And I think, I often tell myself that I don't believe in coincidences, and then I have to remind myself that I don't. because I realize now that it took 2 times to fail for us to actually launch this rocket in Canada for the first time. And you know, we would have done everything to make it launch at SAC, but it is that much more symbolic that it was launched in Timmins in Ontario. And so this was a great success for the team, and I'd like to share a little bit of the emotion that went behind this moment. So over here, you're going to see the rocket launch and all of those years of preparation go into the air, but you'll also feel the excitation of our members that get to see it fly for the first time.
2, 1.
Ready now. 3, 2, 1, plus. Wait, wait, wait. Launch! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Holy shit!
And a little bit of the aftermath. And so this is what rocketry is. It's just a bunch of people that love science, that love applying it. And the fact that it was in the middle of the boreal forest, you know, with Tim Hortons in our hands, it was just amazing. It was amazing. This is also another amazing event, that McGill was able to recover the rocket on the very first day. And this is maybe a conclusion to that emotion and that passion that I want to share here.
All right.
So a lot of these people don't smile often, but if you look at that video, you could count the number of smiles. It's amazing. That led to McGill placing second in the advanced category at the Launch Canada competition. And we have now decided going forward that McGill will only be performing at Launch Canada in the coming years, because just of the supportive atmosphere, you know, how the site is organized, how the fact that it's in Canada, and we know all the teams there, and it really feels like a family reunion every time. So that was Launch Canada from a student perspective. Hope you enjoyed, and I will get the chance to pass it to Ilaria to talk a little bit about our outreach program. But it was a pleasure to be part of this competition and to be returning as a volunteer from now until they kick me out.
Thank you so much for speaking. Really appreciate it, Cyril. We're now going to be passing the microphone to Ilaria Hobbs, who founded her own student team, a student rocketry team, after attending Launch Canada this summer. So please, Ilaria, take it away.
Thank you so much. And those were incredible presentations, both from Adam and from Cyril. Now you've heard Adam talk about grassroots rocketry and supporting Canadian youth in aerospace, and you've heard Cyril talk about the amazing McGill team and hybrid engines. And now you get to learn about the volunteering side of Launch Canada, what we did, how it affected people, and as well, how I got to be where I am today. Hello, my name is Ilaria Hobbs, and I'm a 15-year-old girl, a founder and team head of the Bishop Strong Rocketry team and a Launch Canada volunteer. And I'm so lucky to be here today. Thank you so much to Winta and to Zul, and I hope you can find my journey inspiring. So here's my story. I started rocketry when I was 7 years old. For those who know me, you'll know that I'm proudly Canadian, but they'll also know that I moved to Texas when I was only 5. We lived in Katy, a town just west of Houston, and just a short drive away from Johnson Space Center. We went there nearly every weekend. There's a science show hosted at the Space Museum every day, where they would show us things like marshmallows in a vacuum chamber and liquid absorbing powders. But the butterfly effects that really got me into all this was the Alka-Seltzer rocket. They showed us how to do it at the Space Museum, and my brother and I wanted to try it at home. So we put together the film capsule and the little paper fins, added the Alka-Seltzer, and 50 feet. That was cool, but we wanted more. So we did some research online. And well, my dad did. 7-year-old me mostly just watched cool motor test videos on YouTube. And my dad realized that for only $20 per year, you could launch hobby rockets behind Johnson Space Center. Now, I'm going to tell myself a little bit, and you guys have to pinky promise not to tell anyone, all right? So we thought, what do we need for a rocket launch? Well, of course, you need rocket fuel. So we looked it up online and thought, we could make this at home. Although it probably wasn't the best idea, some of my fondest childhood memories are of testing homemade sugar motors with my dad in my driveway. This next part of my story is why I say that a lot of how I got into rocketry was just dumb luck. The other thing you need for a rocket launch is, of course, the rocket. And us being very new, had no clue that you could buy hobby rocketry kits at every other hobby store. So we decided to make that ourselves too. If you couldn't tell, we're a very DIY family. We didn't know about OpenRocket or AeroDrag or any other rocketry design softwares, so we went to Office Depot. We bought a cardboard mailing tube for a fuselage and some balsa wood for some fin-shaped fins. Lastly, what about the nose cone? Long before we got into rocketry, we've always had very cool friends. And our dear family friend, as well as America's boat builder, Keith Robinson, had taught my dad some basic carbon fiber fiberglass work and epoxy lamination. So we made a nice heavy nose, had some big fins, and just through luck, our first ever scratch-built rocket ended up perfectly stable. We showed up to our first ever launch with a scratch-built mid-powered rocket and a Tupperware full of homemade rocket fuel. The people at NASA were absolutely amazed. And although we had a lot of fun launching hobby kits for a few months behind Johnson Space Center, it was a small field meant mostly for low-powered launches. So pretty soon, they graciously introduced us to EEE Houston. This is where we got to fly our scratch build for the first time, which my brother affectionately named Fog Hog. Pretty soon, we were going up every launch. My brother and I would drag race kits and gawk at the mid to high powered flyers, and we learned from some of the best names in amateur rocketry. Thank you to Texas. I learned how to grind out a black powder charge and how to fill out a flight card, but just like the Alka-Seltzer rockets, pretty soon I was hungry for even more. I designed my first ever rocket at the age of 7, sitting in my dad's lap in front of OpenRocket, a slightly overstable, roughly 5-foot rocket called, and you'll have to take the naming up with 7-year-old me, Flying Moo. Flying Moo can go just over Mach and has hit 8,800 feet with a theoretical maximum apogee of 11,000. My dad proudly documented every single moment, so you can find pretty much all of her flights, as well as a few other embarrassing childhood videos of mine on YouTube. My love of projects didn't nearly stop there, though. Everything I learned through rocketry, I tried to apply to real life and to my day-to-day projects, both rocketry and non-rocketry based. In 2016, my family moved back to Canada, making it a lot harder to launch consistently. Luckily, we still get to launch with EEE in Potter, New York, whenever there's a launch available and we can go to the US. My entire rocketry journey has been about the next big project or amazing opportunity. And after I moved to Canada, of course, I wanted to continue that. The next big step for my rocketry journey came to me in 2022 through Adam and through Launch Canada. For my rocketry journey, Launch Canada is what turned my passion from a fire into a blaze. The kindling was lit years ago, but this event was like dumping gasoline on it, or I guess APCP would be a better metaphor. My dad has been a close friend of Adam Trumpour for years, so naturally he was invited to LC 2022. He was invited to be the launch control officer, as well as already mentoring multiple university rocketry teams. Launch Canada 2022 was revolutionary. It was the first amateur launch of this scale in the country, and everything from the speakers to the ceremonies to the judging was fascinating as a spectator. But 2023 is when I really started to get involved. In August of 2023, I volunteered at Launch Canada as part of Outreach. I love Outreach because you get to see the direct impacts that rocketry makes. Seeing everyone assembling their kits so excited for their first launch is such a rewarding experience. But what did my role actually look like? During the conference, I worked at the outreach table in the arena. I taught people how to assemble and paint their small kits, then hosted and was launch control for a mini launch at the end of the day. This outreach activity was both fun for local children, but of course, it wasn't just for kids. Plenty of adults from the local community stopped by, and you could also find countless students, competitors participating while on break from their table. But of course, the outreach didn't stop when the competition started. Every day that student competitors flew their high-powered rockets, we had a class of kids from the local school come to the spectator area. And at this point, I would like to say a huge thank you to my fellow outreach volunteer and Launch Canada speaker, Cyril. Not only did he work incredibly hard on organizing his speeches and events, but was amazing with the children and made sure everyone had such a great time. Once the students arrived, throughout the morning, we would teach them how to build Alpha 3 kits, stopping around noon for lunch. After lunch, we would move on to the mini launches. We taught students how to pack their own parachutes, loaded their rockets with B-64 motors, and launched them in salvos of 4. After they recovered their rockets, we would take them for a tour of mission control and sometimes even the solid pad itself. This event not only taught kids the basics of rocketry and how to put together a low-powered kit, but gave them that feeling of victory when they got to see their rocket fly. And it also gave them front row seats to some amazing student launches, including McGill's Hybrid and UBC's 2-stage. Seeing these entire classes full of kids so excited about rocketry and aerospace reminded me of when I got into rocketry. Their passion and excitement was incredibly uplifting. Of course, the kids weren't the only people at the spectator area, and another amazing part of working in outreach was meeting amazing people from Timmins, Matagami First Nations, and the local area, as well as people from countless other parts of the country representing aerospace and engineering-focused companies, organizations, and just people who participate in rocketry. Some of the conversations I had were not only fascinating, but inspiring, and I loved both being able to teach people who had never seen a rocket before and learn from people who've been launching for longer than I've even been alive. Launch Canada 2023 was an amazing experience for everyone involved, and I'm so happy I had the chance to volunteer and to participate. Now onto one of the biggest sources of pride, not to mention stress, that I've created, my team. When I mention to someone that I started a rocketry team, I always get a lot of questions, and most of them have to do with what rocketry even is. But I'd say my second most common question is, why did I start a rocketry team? And the answer to that is pretty simple. I started a rocketry team for 7-year-old me, her and the thousands of girls around the world who think our rockets are so cool. Who doesn't? But doesn't get to see many women making them. I made it for girls who want to see representation that doesn't yet exist, as well as for girls that don't even know rocketry exists. I made it for all the people who believe that their dreams aren't possible, because a few years ago, I wouldn't think half of what I'm doing right now is possible. But now I'm here speaking in front of all of you. Another reason I started my rocketry team was, believe it or not, Launch Canada. If you ask anybody on the LC team, they'll say there isn't nearly enough rocketry in Canada, and I couldn't agree more. Participating in Launch Canada is a huge goal of my team, and so is outreach and expanding Canadian rocketry through that, especially to other high school students and to young women. I officially started my team in January of 2023, although it's been in the works since LC summer of 2022. We currently have 12 members and have done 2 successful mini launch days, although our mini launches have been paused to focus on our current main goal, Launch Canada 2024. Like I said, Launch Canada is a pretty big reason why I started my team. Because we live in the city, it can be pretty hard to launch anything other than a gunpowder C motor. But Launch Canada is not only an opportunity to launch student-designed high-powered rockets, but a chance to see what rocketry really looks like. In August of 2024, my team will meet with other amazing teams across the country, and we'll be able to see everything from solids to literal scratch-build liquid rocket motors. Both the challenge of designing and building a high-powered rocket with a payload from scratch and the promise of meeting rocket scientists from across the country are the inspiration that keeps my team going. Although undoubtedly very challenging, Launch Canada 2024 is an amazing goal and projects that we are all so happy to be working on. Throughout the entire experience, there's some goals we always try and keep in mind. We want to inspire more high schools to get involved in rocketry. Although it's pretty cool being the first team on the block, it would be a dream come true to help start and collaborate with high school rocketry teams across the country. I want to grow a sense of community and inspiration inside my school, as well as far beyond its walls. Of course, we have our goals of equality and representation. In a world of unfair stereotypes and wage gaps, we want to change the way the world looks at women and girls in aerospace. Sometimes it feels big and overwhelming, and feels like I'm in over my head. Trying to get my own club room in the school is hard enough, let alone trying to change the entire world's outlook on girls in aerospace. Rocketry, especially leading a team, is really hard work. But rocketry also sometimes makes us feel so close. We live in rocketry itself, and Launch Canada is an extremely tight-knit community. Everyone looks out for one another and does everything in their power to make sure every rocket on site has the best chance to fly. I was talking with a member of my team, and she said, I know that I don't know everything, but this is really fun. And at the heart of it, we're all just a bunch of nerds who want to see things fly. Launch Canada has done amazing things for both Canadian aerospace and for me personally. It was not only a major stepping stone in my rocketry journey, but the thing that allowed me to create my own team. It's a source of undeniable stress and impossible inspiration for students across the country. As amateur rocketry and Canadian aerospace continues to grow, I know Launch Canada will be at the forefront. And as a volunteer, as a team lead, or just as a little girl who's always loved to look at the stars, I want to be right there with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking, Ilaria. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate everybody coming today. Thank you to all the speakers. And I'd like to thank all the sponsors one more time. Really appreciate it. That concludes our seminar for the day. If you guys have any questions, please ask them now. There will be a questioning period. So we're going to respond to some of them. So keep the questions coming. Give us 2 minutes. We're going to begin the question. Somebody is asking, perhaps Cyril, do you want to answer this question? Do people have to be in engineering or other STEM disciplines to get into rocketry?
Not at all. In any field, as long as you're interested. I can tell, not to point them out, but some members of the Launch Canada team that oversee the rocket development and our judges are not in STEM. They are in policy and in other fields of of work. And as long as you love the technology, that you want to work on it, that you're interested, and you put the effort, you'll learn it. And then there's a lot of roles in the rocketry team also as students, right? We need to manage our funding from various sources. We need to apply to grants. We need to, sell ourselves to sponsors. So people from business backgrounds, from arts backgrounds, anyone is welcome. And I can tell you that was something McGill lacked for a long time, is people from various backgrounds, and we have it now. And that's why we're able to raise that funding and be successful in our work.
That response. Ilaria, a question for you. So with the success of this year's outreach activities, what kind of activities can we expect next year from Launch Canada? Can you give us a sneak peek at that by any chance?
Of course. So part of it will mirror what we did this year. Of course, collaboration with Timmins and with Matadami First Nations is really important to us. So you should expect to see a lot of outreach through that, especially with local schools and local kids. I absolutely loved having a class come to the outreach area every day, and hopefully we'll be able to do even more in-depth tours next year. And another thing is Launch Canada social media and nationwide outreach has been increasing every single year, including the amazing videos you're seeing, live streams, and getting more access to people across the country to be able to see our site, even if not in person. So things like virtual tours and walkthroughs.
I can actually add to that the other thing that we really encourage the teams to do is to build their own programs of outreach in their own local communities. And now that we are at a point where we've got rocket teams right across the country, it's pretty cool because it means that they can reach far more people than any one of us ever could. And they're much more directly connected to their own respective communities. So that's something that's already going on as well. And we really want to work with the teams to keep building on that going forward also.
Right, thanks. Adam, question for you. So for LC 2024, will there by any chance be a possibility of having a model rocketry, a low-powered model rocketry division where people can potentially get certified with their L1?
So yes, and in fact, we kind of blazed that trail this year. So obviously, the initial focus of Launch Canada was on the student teams and the main competition, but we've got a lot of volunteers like Ilaria and her dad, who are high power rocketeers themselves. And we really did want to pull everybody in and give people the chance to launch rockets here. As Ilaria mentioned, it's not always easy to do that in Canada, especially when you get into the more advanced or experimental side of rocketry, like hybrid or liquid rockets. And we really want Launch Canada to be a place where these things can happen. So this year we actually had 3 of us, including myself, get our Tripoli Level 1 certifications. So basically,
Awesome.
you can build a small high power rocket, launch it under the keen supervision of our range safety officer, of course. And if you launch it, fly it, and recover it successfully, then you get certified. And so this is sort of how you build your experience in hobby rocketry. And we really are encouraging students and interested members of the public to do that and start taking some of their own initiative to build their own rockets. So worked really well this year. There will be absolutely more of that going forward.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear. A comment / question from the chat, perhaps for you too, Adam. It's so exciting to hear that you have some all-girl and Indigenous teams. Can you talk about some of the strategies you've used to get more diverse communities involved in rocketry?
Absolutely. And honestly, I think some of this has been kind of organic in how it's developed, right? Where Ilaria is a great case in point, where we initially were focused more on the university teams. We hadn't necessarily been ruling out the idea of high school rocket teams, but it hadn't been our primary focus, partly because these can be very challenging projects, and not all high schools really know how to approach it. But Ilaria took the initiative there and is now blazing that trail. So one of the things that I think we've really noticed, even just over the couple years we've been doing this, is it creates almost this feedback loop where the first person that does something suddenly shows that it's possible, and people will see that, and that inspires them to go and run with it in their own directions. So even over a couple years, you'll start seeing maybe that brand new team coming out with a really simple rocket, but then they see that other really advanced team that just, fired the largest liquid rocket engine ever built by students anywhere. And then suddenly something that they maybe never even thought was possible just became real for them because they literally saw it. And that empowers them to start thinking, well, maybe I could do this. And after a couple years of that, it really does go in very interesting directions. So that's kind of the organic part of it. Just across the board, we want to make sure that people who are inspired by this and who want to get involved see that they actually have a clear path to being able to do it. But the Indigenous component has actually been really interesting as well, because for this year, we partnered with the Matagami First Nations. Inherently, if you want to launch rockets, you can't do this in downtown Toronto. You need to go somewhere a little bit farther afield, where you've got a lot of clear airspace and a lot less dense population. And so Northern Ontario ended up being a really good fit for this. And we just happened to find an amazing partner with Matagami. And it became this really cool opportunity for all these students from right across the country to be able to come to this place and interact with the community there, and make hopefully rocketry just that much more real in a part of the country where probably the aerospace industry is not usually top of mind. So a big part of what we do really is just that exposure, showing what's possible, showing people that there is a way that they can engage with it, and showing that it really doesn't matter where you are in this country. If you want to do it, we're here to be that supportive community to create those opportunities.
Thank you so much for that fantastic response. Perhaps the last question, unless we get more in the queue, but this could be for anybody. What was your favorite moment of Launch Canada 2023?
If I could answer that, I think my favorite definitely would be seeing all of the emotion, because everyone thinks of rocketry as a very sort of cold engineering hobby. As Cyril said, so many of the teams, you don't really see them smile, but both seeing all the students and their amazed and shocked faces when they see these flights, and their huge smiles when they get to see their own kits launch, as well as I've grown quite close to a few of the university teams just through attending Launch Canada for 2 years. And when they get to see their projects that they've spent anything from 1 year to up to 9 or 10 years on, when they get to see it fly or fire or launch, seeing all of the passion and emotion and excitement and joy on their faces from this incredible victory is just amazing. And that's always been my favorite part.
That's a great answer. Mine is a little bit less, but it was, if you were to ask me, I regret not being able to say a launch, but one of my favorite moments is, it's the end of the day, we're all tired, and we're going to get some food, and there's this this barbecue place that serves ribs and good fries, and I walk in, and I just, I look around myself and, oh, wait, that's SOAR, that's Calgary, I know these people, and oh, wait, that's UTAT, and oh, that's Adam eating with all the judges. And it was just the whole restaurant, like the 150 people was us, and it just felt amazing. I felt like I was walking in like a family dinner, and people were buying themselves drinks, and it was just a nice environment. And I would say like that was my favorite moment. It's like you go and you know everyone, and that's Abigail from Queens. Like, it's just crazy, and I love it. And so that was my favorite moment, and I hope I can see it again and again in the following years.
Okay, I'll toss in a favorite moment as well. I mean, on the organizer side, obviously it's a huge amount of work putting something like this together, and especially this was our first time doing it at this location, and it was just incredibly satisfying for me seeing how all of this amazing teamwork from the entire year leading up to it just came together in something that that really not only worked and ran quite smoothly, but really did, as people have noted, feel almost like this family reunion. So that was really cool for me. Another thing that I really appreciated this year, I've got to give a really big shout out to the folks from the Matagami Fire Department. They were absolutely amazing. They were there supporting us all week. And they clearly had an absolute blast with this. And at one point, they had some students from a couple of the different rocket teams trying on their fire suits, and they were all posing with some of the rockets. So it was just this really cool opportunity for all of these people to connect over rocketry.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I'll actually add something from LC 2023. My favorite moment was seeing the Starlink satellites deploy. And the most amazing thing was not just seeing the satellites, but the conversation that it got started between everybody that was there with me. If I had just been there with, your average group of people camping, it wouldn't have been so space related and so optimistic for the future. But the fact that everybody started talking about space exploration was just really a testament to the culture that LC cultivated. Everybody that you talk to there, to kind of build on to Cyril, everybody there was interested in rocketry. Like everyone you talk to was interested in it. Like, it's sometimes hard to find somebody to talk to about rocketry or astronomy or space exploration in your day-to-day, but that 1 week that we were there was like, anytime you want, you talk to somebody about rocketry and they're going to be all in for it. So that was really great. One final question, it seems. How did the connection between LC and the First Nation get made?
Yeah, so we had been working for a while to try to find a location for our first competition, which took place in 2021. And I was connected with a really cool guy, Jason Michaud, from an organization called Stardust Technologies. And he's based in Northern Ontario and has been a really great advocate for STEM education and space in particular, particularly in the North. And so for our first event, we worked together and were able to bring Launch Canada to Cochrane, which is a little over an hour north of Timmins. And that really blazed the trail. Our first event worked really well, but it was also clear that the site we were at was going to be hard pressed to expand as we got more and more people. So for this year, we moved a little bit farther south to Timmins. And the Matagami First Nation became sort of the natural partners there.
Thanks. We're going to pass it off now to Victoria to talk about some upcoming events.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Patterson. I'm the Events Planning Committee Chair with Space Place, and just wanted to let you know about some other events if you've enjoyed tonight. Next up in January, we have a members-only event. It's going to be awesome. It's going to have a speaker talking about asteroid and interstellar mining. So if you're interested in that, join Space Place now for the opportunity. Also, some public events coming up this winter and spring. They include topics like quantum technology in space, space health, with some other exciting topics on the horizon as well. So please get in touch and let us know if there's other types of events you'd love to see. And otherwise, please make sure you follow us on Eventbrite or follow our social media so you can make sure, or join our newsletter to make sure that you know when our events are coming up and you can catch the next one. Thanks, Zool. Back to you.
Thank you. One final question. This will be the last one. Ilaria, would you like to see other schools start rocketry clubs? If so, what advice do you have for them?
I would absolutely love to see other schools and other high schools start rocketry teams. Just having them there at the competition or even collaborating them on things like projects or outreach would be an absolute dream come true. As for advice I have, part of it is, I guess, get a really strong foundation first. So research rocketry, research local launch sites and local or even slightly farther away, but close, emotionally close to, I guess, mentors, especially for people who don't know about rocketry, having just anyone to give a helping hand. And I can recommend so many people in Launch Canada who'd be happy to mentor any sort of team. Having a helping hand with gaining this new knowledge would be, I think, my number one piece of advice. No matter what skill level you're at, it's always amazing to have a mentor there to help you through it.
Okay, thank you to Space Place for hosting this event. Thank you to all the speakers for joining. And thank you to the viewers, everybody at home watching. Appreciate that. We hope to see you all at Launch Canada 2023. So with that, we will finish the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.